Welcome to the Dan Sports Tips Daily Fantasy Show for the NFL Week 6 slate. I'm going to be taking a look at everything we need for your daily fantasy games on DraftKings this week. Offensive stacks, defensive stacks, other players at each of the positions. For any of you that haven't had the opportunity to sign up and play daily fantasy sports with DraftKings yet, I'll pop a link in the description of this video that will enable you to do that and join in the fun today. I'll start at the top of the shop with the offensive stacks. The Chicago Bears, quarterback Brian Hoyer for 5,800 and wide receiver Cameron Meredith for 4,100. I put these two players up last week. The stack is obviously nowhere near as sneaky as when I put it up in last week's game, but the production looks repeatable to me this week. Hoyer has amassed 3 straight games with 300 plus yards and multiple touchdown passes, and Meredith would appear to have taken over the Kevin White role in the offense. He's the most where White was the most targeted receiver prior to injury. Rookie cornerback Jalen Ramsey for the Jags will probably be on Alshon Jeffrey, the forgotten man of the Bears passing game. The Jags defense is actually much better against the pass, ranks number 7 in DVOA metrics from Football Outsiders, while struggling against the run. The Jags are coming off a bye week, facing a porous Bears defensive unit. The game has plenty of the makings that we'd look for a shootout, which should mean that they'll be slinging it around again, and I think both these players are going to have a link up for a good day. The Kansas City Chiefs, quarterback Alex Smith for 5,700, wide receiver Jeremy Maclin for 6,300. In all honesty, I do prefer the Bears stack at a cheaper overall cost, but in a matchup on the road against a Raiders pass defense, that is one of the primary options to take on if you aren't playing a slate that includes Monday Night Football and don't have the luxury of opposing the Jets secondary. If we exclude the game against run-heavy Tennessee for the Raiders, who are amongst the lowest scoring, Tennessee are amongst the lowest scoring offences in the league, Oakland have allowed at least 282 passing yards and 27 points in every other game they've played, and DVOA ranks them 29th against the pass this season. The Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton at quarterback for 8,100, Kelvin Benjamin at wide receiver for 8,100 is the pricey premium stack of the week, as we see Carolina going into the Dome to face the New Orleans Saints. Cam is expected to play back from the concussion and as always offers upside with his legs, and his favourite target Benjamin has seen the lion's share of targets in the passing game along with tight end Greg Olsen. The Saints' pass defence was notoriously bad last year, hasn't improved by much if at all in this year. It's banged up, making a favourable matchup for Benjamin. With the Panthers' defence not operating at previous high levels, particularly in the secondary, and the Saints coming in off of a bye week, this game profiles as a shootout. Cheaper option for this stack, of course, is going to be Cam Newton at quarterback for 8,100 with Greg Olsen at tight end for $7,000. Greg Olsen has a floor this year of 64 yards. That was against the Minnesota Vikings, who have got one of the league's best defences against the tight end position. The Saints have struggled over the middle of the field for an extended period as well. Olsen comes in off of his second 100-yard receiving performance of the season. Should put up good numbers again this week. That is if you don't mind paying up at the tight end position in this stack. Sticking with this game, the New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees for 7,900 and wide receiver Brandon Cooks for 7,600. The Saints perform much better when they're at home in the Dome, averaging almost a touchdown higher in terms of points scored. They'll face a struggling and inexperienced Panthers secondary in a likely shootout as the Saints defence struggles to stop much of anything. Cooks has largely disappeared since a week 1 performance with 143 yards and 2 touchdowns that was largely made up by that long touchdown that went for over 90 yards against the Raiders. On a deeper look at his matchups, though, he has had some difficult games against the likes of Jason Verrett in San Diego, Desmond Trufant in Atlanta, and the solid Giants cornerback pairing as well. This assignment looks much easier. He can be expected to bounce back and have a big day linking up with Brees in a shootout against the Panthers this weekend. And finally, the Houston Texans, quarterback Brock Osweiler for 5,400 and wide receiver Will Fuller for 5,900. After the well-publicised struggles from both the Texans' overall offence and Brock Osweiler in particular, some relief could well come this week against an appalling Colts defence that allowed the Bears and Brian Hoyer to go wild on them last weekend. With DeAndre Hopkins likely matching up against Devontae Davis on one side, Will Fuller, the deep threat on this team, could well get some looks against a Colts defence that DVOA ranks as the second worst pass defence in the league. If Osweiler doesn't put some numbers up Sunday night, it's time for the DFS world to give up on him. The Texans, unfortunately for them, do not have that same luxury with the contract they've got him signed to. Looking at defensive stacks, there is only one I'm going to use this week. Running back Christian Michael of the Seattle Seahawks for 6,800 and the Seahawks defense and special teams for 3,600. The Seahawks defense will face off with the backing of the 12th man against a top quality Falcons offense. The Falcons have had a brutal run of games now, home to Carolina, at Denver, and finishing up at Seattle, and back-to-back road games as well. This could well be their undoing. The Hawks match up well with the Falcons as a stout run-stopping unit with an elite corner in Sherman to shut down Julio Jones as much as that can be done. Christian Michael has seized the opportunity as a lead back after the Thomas Rawls injury and retirement of Marshawn Lynch. He totaled 20 points prior to the bye against a good Jets rush defense. Against a Falcons unit that ranks 24th in DVOA against the run, Michael looks set for a strong outing this week. Looking at our quarterbacks this week, Russell Wilson of those Seattle Seahawks for 6,900 is a threat through the air and on the ground. A home matchup against a Falcons defense that lacks for a pass rush in the main and has holes looks to provide an excellent opportunity off of the bye week, with Wilson having had time to heal for him to produce a quality outing this weekend as the Falcons come to the end of that brutal 3-game stretch. And quarterback Andy Dalton of the Cincinnati Bengals for 5,500. The Patriots defense has struggled against the pass this year somewhat uncharacteristically. Dalton will likely be fairly low owned this week, having struggled against the Cowboys unit last week. Despite his struggles, Dalton still broke through the 20-point barrier, is quite capable of putting touchdowns on the board late in comeback attempts, even if he does struggle early in the game. The Patriots are almost certain to score points in this game. With Jeremy Hill probably missing this game, the Bengals are likely to be forced to throw the ball more often in this matchup, with just Jeremy Bernard left in their backfield. Looking at running backs this week, Jordan Howard of the Chicago Bears for 6,200 is fast becoming priced up with the first string running backs in the game, but he has a nice home matchup this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars unit that is ranked 29th against the run as per DVOA. Howard has produced following injuries to Langford and Carey and has the backing of the coaching staff in the starters role, so we don't have any worries about a sudden change at running back here. He's gone over the 100-yard rushing threshold in each of the last 2 games, adding 3 catches as well. Lamar Miller of the Houston Texans for 6,600. Miller has seen his price drop substantially after it has become clear that he was a product of volume rather than performance in week 1 against Chicago, his only 100-yard performance of the season. It's been fairly well publicised. He has yet to find the end zone this year, as the Texans, I believe, are the last team standing without a rushing touchdown. A matchup with the Colts is a good opportunity to break out and set that record straight this week. Running back Todd Gurley of the Los Angeles Rams, he's at 6,700 this week. There's been a lot of panic about the reigning offensive rookie of the year and his lack of production, talking of a sophomore slump. It's true he is averaging just 2.7 yards per carry on the season. He has had some tough matchups to face as well, though, with only the opening weekend matchup against the 49ers being against a defense ranked in the bottom half of the league in terms of the run by DVOA. Detroit ranked 28th against the run in that category, are easily the softest matchup Gurley will face to this point in the year. I'll happily take him to bounce back, and because of his struggles, he could be low owned this week as well. And LeSean McCoy of the Buffalo Bills for 6,900. I would have stacked McCoy with the Bills defense in our defensive stacks this week, but I am a little bit concerned by the change to Colin Kaepernick for the 49ers at quarterback. That being said, the 49ers rush defense is ineffective. They haven't stopped many backs this year, and now take the hit of losing Navarro Bowman for the year as well. The unit's allowed over 170 yards in 3 of their last 4 games on the ground alone. McCoy comes in off a huge performance, going for 150 yards against the Rams at a whopping 8.3 yards per carry. He should feast again this week, particularly with the inconsistent performance of Tyrod Taylor and the absence of Sammy Watkins at wide receiver. If you do want to stack them with the Buffalo Bills defense and special teams, if you believe the rumours that the Bills fans are literally just going to sing the national anthem every offensive snap for San Francisco so Kaepernick kneels down, be my guest. It's possibly worth a look, but I just was put off a little bit because we know what Kaepernick can be, even if we haven't seen it for a little while. Looking at our wide receivers, Antonio Brown of the Pittsburgh Steelers, $10,000 this week. He's probably a cash play rather than a tournament play because you are unlikely to get the required value from a player at this price to win a tournament. However, guaranteed production is what Brown gives you. If we exclude the Bengals game, which was played in terrible weather, he has achieved a floor of 22 points in every other game this season. He faces a below average Dolphins secondary after being somewhat overshadowed by Sammy Coates last week. I think Brown will continue his consistency as he drops passes far less frequently than his counterpart. Allen Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars for 7,800. If Hoyer can engineer another solid offensive day for the Chicago Bears, there should be plenty of opportunity all game for Robinson to feast on Tracy Porter, who is a serviceable cornerback, but outmatched against the better receivers in the league, of which Robinson most definitely is included in that group. Whether the production comes in the usual late comeback attempt for the Jaguars, or they come out strong off of the bye week, it's a reasonable expectation that Robinson can produce against a banged-up Bears defence that lacks for a pass rush, which will give Bortles time to find his top receiver in this game. Jarvis Landry of the Miami Dolphins for 6,800 is the favourite target of Ryan Tannehill. He's a target monster. The opportunity for production, volume, is all that we can ask for. We know that Landry will receive it. I'm unconcerned about the lack of volume last week. The Steelers will score in this game. Miami will be forced to throw, and as such, the targets will return after last week's anomaly for Landry, who averaged over 11 targets per game through the first 4 weeks of the year. Cole Beasley of the Dallas Cowboys for 4,400. This is simply a play based on the expectation that Ezekiel Elliott fails to produce against an outstanding Packers defensive front this week, and that the Cowboys are forced to throw the football. Prescott doesn't air the ball out and throw it out wide. He makes the bread and butter throws over the middle. Beasley is the recipient of those, doesn't drop passes. I would hope for somewhere around 8 or more targets for the slot receiver this week that should be there, able then to provide us with the required value. And the lottery play, if you like, wide receiver Tavon Austin of the Los Angeles Rams for 3,900 is one of the key cogs for the Rams offense in their very limited playbook. He really hasn't been involved this year to the degree that the Rams would have hoped he would have been, particularly given the contract extension they signed into him in the off-season. Operating out of the backfield and in the slot, he should have ample opportunities to excel against a bad Lions defensive unit, assuming that Case Keenum can get the ball into his hands and let him make plays. He has a very, very high ceiling, also a low floor, but in this matchup for a bargain bin price, I like Tavon Austin this week. Tight end Delanie Walker of the Tennessee Titans for 5,500. The Cleveland Browns have struggled defensively all year. The tight end position has caused them many problems. Walker is one of the favourite targets of Mariota when pass plays are called. Looks a good bet to have a strong game this week, despite playing in one of the lowest scoring offences in the league. Jason Witten of Dallas for 4,200. As per Cole Beasley, Witten will gobble up the throws Prescott makes over the middle, as I don't expect another big day from Elliott at running back this week. Witten's expensive for a tight end. He does likely need to find the end zone for value to be returned in tournament play, but I'm not expecting the volume to be an issue this week. And Richard Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers for 2,900. With Jared Cook out, Rodgers becomes the guy at tight end for the Packers. He's produced when called upon in the past, though admittedly not last week. He's a viable cheap option against a Dallas team that is not too bad all of a sudden on the outside, meaning Rodgers may be looking to throw the ball over the middle a bit more to his namesake at the tight end position. And finishing off with defense and special teams, the Tennessee Titans for 3,300. This is the automatic Cleveland fade. Tennessee have proved to be a fairly stout defensive unit this year. They'll face a decimated Browns team. It's got a lot to prove offensively. They can get things done. Limited weapons. Both teams play low-scoring games. Anything the special teams give here will be a bonus. That's what I've got for you on the daily fantasy games this week. Let me know in the comments who you'll be using in your lineups. Let me know what you think will happen this week in the NFL. Don't forget to like the video. Please do subscribe to my channel. Give me a follow on Twitter at dansports.tips. Don't forget to tweet me any lineups you have using these players where you do experience some success. Best of luck with your lineups. I'll see you next week.